the whisper that echoes for years. There is a kind of silence we learn too early. It doesn't start with loud words, it starts with sighs, raised eyebrows, quick glances. The tightening of a friend's jaw when you speak too passionately, the way people shift in their seat when your joy takes up a little too much space. The teacher who tells you to calm down, the parent who says you're too dramatic, the friend who says, you always overthink everything. And so, quietly, you begin to shrink. At first, just a little. You lower your voice, you edit your emotions, you apologize after expressing excitement, you second-guess your ideas in meetings, you start sentences with, I'm sorry, but you learn, slowly and painfully, that being too much is dangerous, that your fire is something to be ashamed of. But here's what no one tells you: the world doesn't need less of you, it needs all of you. So today, we stop apologizing for the volume of our voice, for the fullness of our feelings, for the brightness of our light, not because it's easy, but because shrinking never led anyone to freedom. The lie of too much. And who told it first? Let's talk about where this begins. There's a girl, maybe 6, maybe 16. She feels deeply. She questions things others ignore. She laughs too loud, cries when others stay composed, asks uncomfortable questions in classrooms. And one day someone tells her, you're too sensitive, too emotional, too loud, too dramatic, too needy, too intense. She doesn't know it yet, but she just received the first brick of the wall she'll build around herself. Maybe that girl was you. Take Sophia, for example, a brilliant woman I met during a workshop. She said she was always the emotional one in the family. When her parents fought, she felt everything. When her brother was bullied, she cried for him. And when she tried to speak about what hurt, she was told, stop being so sensitive. Life is hard. So she toughened up. She buried her softness under sarcasm. She turned her heart into performance. On the outside, she became the strong one. But inside, she was exhausted, disconnected, dimming. And this is what that lie does. It convinces you that your sensitivity is a weakness, that your intensity is a burden, that your boldness is arrogance. But I want to ask you something. Who benefits when you believe you're too much? And what if, just what if, the world is actually starved for women who feel deeply, speak boldly, and live loudly? The beautiful mess of being human. Let's talk about emotions. There's this unspoken rule that it's okay to feel, but only a little. Not too happy, not too sad, not too angry, not too excited, not too expressive, not too honest, and definitely not too vulnerable. We grow up thinking that maturity means emotional control, that being put together means being quiet, reserved, and always fine. But the truth is, the human experience was never meant to be beige. You are not a flat line. You are a symphony, a chaotic, vibrant, unpredictable mix of fear and hope, rage and love, joy and heartbreak. Let me tell you about Hannah, a poet I met who once stopped writing because someone called her too intense. Her words made people uncomfortable. Her imagery was raw, unfiltered. And one day someone said, maybe tone it down a little, be more relatable. She didn't write again for 3 years, until one night, she stumbled on her old notebook and read a poem she had forgotten. She cried, not because it was perfect, but because it was true, and that truth had been waiting all that time, buried beneath her silence. Here's the thing, when you apologize for being too much, you silence the very parts of you that make you real. Feel it all. Let your laughter echo. Let your tears fall. Let your words shake. That's not being too much. That's being alive. The cost of shrinking and the magic of expansion. There's a moment in every woman's life when she realizes that shrinking didn't save her. It just made her invisible. We think that by making ourselves smaller, quieter, easier, less opinionated, we will be loved more, that people will stay, that conflict will disappear, that peace will follow. But what often happens is the opposite. You become a version of yourself you barely recognize. We stop apologizing, not just in words, but in posture, in presence, in how we speak, how we walk, how we exist. You don't owe the world an apology for feeling deeply, speaking boldly, dreaming wildly, loving fiercely, failing publicly, taking up space, saying no, saying yes. To yourself, you were never too much. You were just in rooms that were too small. Let me say that again. You were never too much. You were just in rooms that were too small. So take your fullness and walk toward spaces that honor it. Let your laugh be loud. Let your ideas be big. Let your tears come when they must. Let your dreams offend those who settled. Because the world has enough people who blend in. It needs more people, more women, who are willing to stand out, shake things up, and live unapologetically. When culture calls it shameful, many women come from cultures where being bold is seen as rebellion, where being opinionated is labeled disrespect, where softness is strength only if it stays silent. You can add a reflection here on how culture shapes our fear of being too much. Include a short story, maybe of a girl who wanted to pursue a creative dream but was silenced in the name of Azet or Log Kakahenge. End it with, your truth is not disrespect, your voice is not rebellion, it's reclamation. The mirror we avoid. Talk about self-abandonment. When you water yourself down to fit in, you eventually look in the mirror and don't recognize who you are. This section can explore the grief of losing yourself and the slow journey back. Mini story idea. A woman who forgot her favorite color, favorite songs, favorite hobbies because she was always living for others. When you finally stop apologizing for being too much, you begin remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. Finding safe spaces for your full self. Guide the listener through what it means to build or find safe spaces, not ones that tolerate your intensity, but celebrate it. You don't just need people who clap for your light. You need those who stand beside you when your shadows speak too. You can invite the audience to audit their friendships and relationships. Who lets you be loud, messy, joyful, emotional, raw, and real without flinching? Too much for them, just right for your purpose. This is a reframe section. What others call too much might actually be your gift. Too emotional, maybe you're meant to be a healer. Too talkative, maybe you're a communicator. Too intense, maybe you're here to break cycles. Mini stories share how someone turned what they were once ashamed of into a career, mission, or form of art. Your calling will often be found in what others tried to shame out of you. Rewrite the narrative. From apology to authority, a powerful closing part where you ask the listener to rewrite their story. From being the girl who apologized to the woman who owns her voice, her volume, her energy, you can say, today, write a new ending. One where you are the author, not the editor of your soul. Invite the audience to say affirmations aloud. I am not too much. I am whole. I do not need to shrink to be loved. I take up space, fully, boldly, loudly. I am done apologizing for being myself. You were taught to shrink, not because you were wrong, but because you were powerful. We were never told the truth. We were told a version of it that made us more manageable. We were told, don't talk too loud, people won't take you seriously. Don't laugh too much, it's immature. Don't cry in public, it's embarrassing. Don't want too many things, be satisfied. Don't shine too bright, you'll make others uncomfortable. But here's the thing. You weren't silenced because you were wrong. You were silenced because someone feared your voice. You weren't taught to shrink because you were too much. You were taught to shrink because your power made people nervous. Think about that. We are raised to believe that strength means quiet obedience, that femininity means softness without boundaries, that leadership must come without feelings, that ambition must be hidden behind politeness, that confidence must always apologize. But that narrative wasn't created to help you thrive. It was designed to keep you small enough to not disturb the systems built without you in mind. Mini story. A woman named Ikra once told me, I was always the one with ideas in the room, but I was told I talked too much, that I always had something to say. So eventually, I stopped raising my hand, and I watched people with less passion lead the things I once dreamed of. That's the cost of silence. Not just your voice, but your impact, your leadership, your art, your truth. But the beautiful thing, you can reclaim it even now. You weren't wrong for being expressive. You were a storm in a world that feared rain. And now you get to pour freely. The pain of performing and the grace of returning. There's a unique exhaustion that comes from always pretending to be smaller than you are. It's not the kind of tired sleep can fix. It's a soul deep ache. The fatigue of constantly hiding. It happens when you perform more than you exist. When you become a version of yourself that's more acceptable, more pleasing, more muted, just to survive a dinner table, a relationship, a community. You wake up one day and realize you've been apologizing for your feelings, your truth, your presence, for so long that even your joy feels like a performance. Real life story. One day, a woman stood in front of me during a workshop and cried, I don't even know what I like anymore, she said. I've been everything everyone needed me to be. The strong daughter, the understanding wife, the perfect mom, the reliable friend, and now I don't know who I am without them. And I held her hand and said, then maybe now is when you stop performing and start returning to yourself. You don't owe anyone a version of yourself that fits their comfort. You don't need to explain why your light is a little brighter, why your laughter is louder, why your love is deeper, or why your pain is harder to hide. You only owe yourself one thing: authenticity. You don't need to perform. You need to come home to the woman you were before the world told you she was too much. Grieving the girl who dimmed her light. Before we rise fully, we have to grieve the parts of ourselves we buried to survive. This is the part we skip. The part that hurts too much. The part where we sit with the memory of the girl who wanted to dance freely, but was told she looked foolish. The girl who wrote poetry in journals, then tore them up when someone laughed. The girl who loved loudly, but was ghosted and then blamed herself for being too emotional. We all have her inside us, and before we reclaim our fire, we need to mourn her. You don't get to empowerment by skipping grief. You rise by honoring the parts of you that were shamed. By holding your younger self in your arms and whispering, "I'm sorry I let them convince you that you had to be less. I'm sorry I made you quiet to stay loved. I'm sorry I didn't know how to protect you, but I'm here now, and we are coming back, full and unapologetic." Mini metaphor. Think of yourself like a house with locked rooms. Every apology you made for being too loud, too messy, too passionate, locked a door, but now you hold the key. Grieve her, love her, and thing open every door again. The joy you hid, and why it's time to let it out. Let's talk about something we rarely associate with being too much: joy. Somewhere along the way, we learned that joy is suspicious. If you're too happy, you must be naive. If you're too excited, you're not grounded. If you celebrate too loudly, you're showing off. And so, we started apologizing for joy. We downplayed our wins. We hid our excitement. We smiled smaller. We stopped dancing at weddings, stopped singing in the car, stopped giggling like girls. Why? Because someone said it was too much. But your joy was never supposed to be polite. It was meant to be felt in your bones. It was meant to be loud, wild, and radiant. Mini story. A woman I met in London once told me she got a scholarship to her dream university and didn't tell anyone because she was scared they'd think she was bragging. She cried as she told me. I dimmed my own joy because I didn't want to make anyone else uncomfortable. And I told her, your joy is sacred. Never apologize for it. Celebrate with your full chest. The world doesn't have enough joy to begin with. Don't be the one to hide yours. So today, mini metaphor, your fire is like an ember beneath the ashes. It's never fully gone, just buried beneath layers of politeness, approval seeking, pain, and doubt. But with every truth you speak, with every boundary you set, with every dance you dance, with every no you say with grace, and every yes you whisper to your own heart, that ember begins to burn again. So let it burn, let it rise, let it light up the sky. You are not too much. You are just getting started. A love letter to the woman who feels too much, to the woman who has been called too much her whole lifing. You are not broken. You are not dramatic. You are not needy. You are not unstable. You are not too much. You are poetry. You are thunder. You are the full moon and the storm beneath it. You are sacred. You are whole. You are enough, more than enough, just as you are. So don't shrink. Don't dilute. Don't contort your truth to keep others comfortable. You were not born to be small. You were born to take up space, to heal, to rise, to roar, to feel. And if someone can't hold that, let them go, because your soul isn't negotiable, and your too muchness, that's your superpower. Own it, live it, shine, unapologetically.